I remember not being sure how the cancer journey would end. I really had to be prepared. You sit in bed and all the things they talk about, if you had X number of days to live. I was really thinking about that. And so, in capturing it in these pages and on my MacBook and my sketchbook. But as it relates to comet energy, I talk about that from the standpoint of you never know what one phone call will do. I strongly believe, and I've shared this with friends to kind of keep me going, and I had 20 friends that were really fierce femme friends, I hope you have them too, that would not let me think about anything other than the light. It was like a love net that protected me, and they still do. I'm gonna get emotional. There's a lot of darkness out there. Let's all be comets in the sky and light the way and be fierce about the time that we have.
Hello, and welcome back to the Ray of Light TV podcast. Thank you for joining us for season 3. We have been away, but we are back in a brand new studio. We are here in the beautiful VAR studios, and thank you for tuning in again today. For my first guest, I have Jing Lauengco. She is the founder of the Other Brown Girls community, a space for women of color to storytell, write, read, and just really explore themselves. Jing's mission is to help modern CEOs and entrepreneurs hit reset in their business in order to grow their goals, tell their story, build their brands. Jing is passionate about business, owners creating work in real life that they love, and as an entrepreneur herself, Jing has been featured in all type of magazines all over Cleveland. She's a major deal. I'm going to pass the mic to her to let her introduce herself.
Oh my goodness. Raven-Lynn, thank you so much for having me, and congrats to you on this beautiful podcast and all the work that you do in the world to help women share their real selves and their stories. So I'm honored to be here in this beautiful space. Yes. And I really appreciate you reaching out, and it's a delight to actually meet you because I know we've been connected socially and LinkedIn, so it's wonderful to actually see you in person.
Absolutely. So Jing, for those who do not know you, can you tell us a little bit about your businesses and
Sure.
what Jing Inc. is?
Sure. So I am a brand strategist. I work in a business coaching capacity right now. I do a lot of different kinds of things. And so I really come from a design background. I was a former design firm founder and ad agency executive in a past life. And now I'm very excited to be helping modern entrepreneurs hit, as you mentioned, reset, to really reimagine what's next for them and how to take things next level. So Jing Inc. is my business consultancy, and I really love to work with modern CEOs to reimagine what shows up when they show up. So that could be in the form of digital storytelling, it could be brand boosting or building, both personally and professionally, or resetting if you've come across change or transformation, as I know I have, and I know we're going to talk about that. So I do other things too. I also have Right Now Next Thing with Jing, a podcast that I'm getting ready to kind of reboot as well. And that is about next chapters and new adventures. From setbacks to comebacks to never looking back. And I know that a lot of people are feeling this collectively. I know we talked about this as you created your own podcast coming out of the pandemic. There's a new now for all of us. And I'm really excited to be able to work with different business leaders, entrepreneurs, civic leaders to think about next generation leadership for themselves and also our communities.
Yes. So Jing, as someone who has a career who has spanned it over 10 plus years as an entrepreneur, why do you think it's so important for businesses to reimagine themselves?
Sure. Well, I really think, and we talked about this and kind of your very thorough, comprehensive prep before the podcast, which I appreciate. We're all born living stories and brands, and we're constantly evolving. Hopefully that's the goal, right? To elevate and to expand in ways that we had never really imagined for ourselves. So I was born a brand. My name is Jing for Jingle Bells. I was born on Christmas, and really in Raven-Lynn, that's a brand as well. So I think this idea that we are breathing brands, living stories. We are making history every day. We are leaving really digital artifacts behind. And so it's this idea that you live with intention and that your work in the world matters and that it's always shining. It's always shining and as an example. So I think that evolving is important because a lot of times we're in sort of autopilot and, life is moving so fast. So moments like this, I'm so grateful and delighted that we could share this time together and that you are, again, lifting voices, sharing stories, and it matters. And so I just want to commend you for the work that you're doing and that I'm delighted to be part of this reboot reset with you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So Jing, I know we see this word brand in branding a lot. We see it all over social media, Instagram, Facebook. From a brand strategist, what is a brand?
Sure. Well, brand can mean many things. So from a business perspective, I think brand strategy is business strategy.
Okay.
Brand strategy is business strategy. So as we talk about brand, I like to think about your voice identity and your visual identity. So a lot of people think of a brand as the logo, which it is. And it's really an entry point. It's shorthand. It's a trust mark. So it's a sort of a signal to show you, I found my people. And really brands are about trust and tribes. So the work that you're doing with this podcast, you're magnetizing the kind of people that are part of your brand, which is a shared belief system, shared meaning. And so I like to think of brand really as something more than just the visual. It's really culture. Yeah. So, RayofLight, that's a culture. And brands follow the culture, the energy of the leader. And a lot of times brands begin with a strong leader like yourself. And then that becomes sort of this personal brand that evolves into a professional brand. Yeah. I see that a lot with architectural firms or design firms. You might start as a solo entrepreneur and then suddenly to be able to scale and help more people, which I like to do, you have to sort of expand how you think about yourself as a brand, both personally and professionally. And so I would also say, as we all know, right now, the way that we're consuming content and creating content collectively, there's always this on switch.
Yeah.
And so this idea of what is a brand? Who am I? What do I have to say? It, in some ways, even just doing these exercises for yourself, help you figure out your voice, your vision, how you want to show up, both personally and professionally, what you stand for, who you are, more importantly, who you're not. So that's some of the work that I do. I'm doing some workshops for executives, which has been so much fun. And so it's around thinking about your story and how you help people create their own stories in business and how this lives and really where you step in. There's always a before and after when you help a brand. And part of this is really understanding who you stand for. And I do a couple of exercises. I call them my 5WH exercises and workshops. And it's really understanding who, what, where, when, why, then how. A lot of times with brands, people will ask, how do I get this website up? I really need to get out there. What does that mean? So it's really understanding brands as experiences and that they're living and breathing stories. That's how I would describe it.
And I think that's so good because I feel, as a young Gen Zer, the thing that I feel is missing from so many brands is authenticity. Yes. So it seems like what we're seeing on social media is a lot of people following trends or trying to be someone else's brand to kind of be accepted on these social platforms. So I think activities like the 5 Ws are good because it's like, well, who am I? Who am I not? And how can I kind of stay true to my values?
That's right. And I commend you too. Look at you. You're evolving.
Yeah.
You're hitting reset. And that's brave. That's brave to say, you know what? My story is expanding. It has not ended. And so I think that's part of it is, again, living with intention, really thinking about being responsive versus reactionary in terms of what's happening around the world, right? But it's always good to know what the pulse is and that sort of golden thread that moves through the work that you do, both personally and professionally. It's also just staying very clear on your own light and what lights you up. And, attracting the same kind of light. And so I'm drawn to you by the things that you're doing. And again, that's really a testament to your brand, what you're building and continue to build for others as an example.
Yeah. I love the thing that Jing said about your brand being your belief system and your culture. Can you tell us a little bit about the Other Brown Girl, which is actually how I found you?
Yes.
And what it means to you. I know why it means a lot to me and relates to me, is because just like you said kind of on your blog, there aren't a lot of storytellers with people who look like us. was. So
That's right.
women of color, women.
Yes.
And so what kind of was the heart behind creating that brand, and how has it evolved into now with Next Thing with Jing?
Yes. So great question. I get asked that a lot. So as we know, we all went through this just immense social, professional, personal change through the pandemic. And so in 2017, 2 months after, the world changed, I went to the Philippines. So I'm Filipina. I was born in Manila. And so my mom was selling her childhood home outside of Manila, 2 hours away. And so I went with her and went with my aunts, and it was this magical trip. It really felt mystical. So I felt like a Filipina Alice in Wonderland. We went to the village in Bataan, and we took a 10-hour drive along the coast of the Philippines. And this was with my aunt. So it was really an opportunity to hear stories firsthand and imagine my mom in these villages. So we would drive, there's mercury pools in the rice fields. I would see Filipino moms with their babies on their hips, and it just felt magical. It felt like I'd stepped into an ancestral time capsule. And so that's how Other Brown Girls started. So it was about a 10, 11-day trip. I kept a journal, and in 2019, I discovered on all days Halloween that I had cancer. I had a bad scan. And so this is also something I want to share. I want to make sure everyone, every woman, and anyone who loves a mom, sister, girlfriend, cousin, any of the above, to get yourself checked. 3D mammogram and a second opinion saved me. So in 2019, I found out that I had cancer, and I just started writing and thinking about my life, what I wanted to do. The world was so different back then, and things were changing. This is well before we knew that the pandemic was on the horizon and looming. So I was really writing in my comeback bed. That's what I called it. And I took virtual classes, Literary Cleveland, wonderful organization. Please check them out and sign up for some virtual classes, which I did. And so I started writing, and I came up with this idea of Other Brown Girl, which was originally the start of a memoir. So I wrote about 100,000 words as I was recovering. 2020, March 5th, I had my second surgery, which was a week before lockdown. So it was just a very tumultuous time for me, for everyone, really. My heart was broken. The world was on fire. There was social change. My heart was breaking because I couldn't go and protest. I was recovering. I didn't quite know how I fit into the discussion with our son, who was, a half brown kid. And I just wanted to do something. So Other Brown Girl really was born from this moment in time for me personally, and also to make sense of what was happening in the world. So in October of 2020, I applied on a whim to apply for a grant through Cleveland Leadership Center. And I really didn't realize that because of the pandemic that there was a stage component where you have to do a video. So I didn't read all of the fine print, and I might not have done it, but you do what, actually I'm grateful that I did it. And so a friend of mine, Jen Jones-Hanatelli, encouraged me to apply. Rachel Chamcha of Cleveland Leadership Center actually put out a call, and I applied for this grant and won. And so I won Technovation, which was Cleveland Foundation, Cleveland Leadership Center. This is sort of their technology innovation, accelerate component. And this was through Citizens Bank, and it's Citizens Bank Change. And so Other Brown Girl was born. I basically popped up all the stories that I had written, and I didn't think anyone would read it, but suddenly people were starting to reach out and asking me about my experiences. So this, I would say, is an example of just sharing your story, showing up. When you talk about authenticity, I didn't think anyone would read this. This was really for my son. Yeah. And I'm grateful. The way it has evolved, it's opened up doors, and it's allowed me to talk about my heritage and the hope that I have for the world. I think it was very difficult, as many of us know. The world, the temperature was running so hot. There's so many of us in the brown and black communities that are living a different experience. And I just didn't quite know how to talk about it. I feel like I have brown privilege in some ways. My dad came in the 70s when the world was more welcoming. He was a doctor. He opened up a clinic. And I started, actually during this time too, I started working with a wonderful group called OPAL, Ohio Progressive Asian Women Leadership. And I started to meet other brown girls and women of Asian descent during this like terrible anti-Asian hate moment that we experienced, and are in some ways, in some places, still experiencing. And you know, I just was able to connect with a lot of people through this work. And then it became next thing with Jing, because I have a lot of friends who are not necessarily other brown girl, but are allies, true allies to our communities. And so friends who are non-binary, friends that are, you know, look at the world through a different lens, but are allies truly to me and my biggest advocate. So that's why I started Next Thing with Jing. And I started to interview lots of friends, really change agents who are changing lives through their example. That's a long answer, but there it is. Yeah.
Yes. And thank you. I feel like with RayofLight, that's kind of how it happened too. It was just, I started recording voice memos on my phone.
Yes.
With no intention for it to kind of develop into this. But like you said, I feel like I found community that related to kind of what I was going through in that time.
That's right.
Speaking to Black women, speaking to women my age, speaking to women of faith,
yes.
Which was important to me. My community kind of found me.
Yes.
And
yes,
I think
yes.
that's why it's so important for women to just have the confidence and the courage to share their voice, like
Absolutely.
you said. Because I feel like we're always our biggest critic. We think nobody wants to hear what we have to say, but everybody clearly wants to hear what we have to say. We have our tribe. So I know that you spoke to the funding that you got. Why do you think it's important for women specifically, especially brown women, to go after these grants?
Sure. So, so the grant is one thing, yes. There's always that hope and outcome that you're going to receive something. I want to be clear in that I used it more as an opportunity to map out a business plan or a structure. So I honestly didn't think I was going to win, or I did it more as an exercise to map it. And it really helped me articulate that who, what, where, when, why, how of this particular project, which was Other Brown Girl. But for you with RayofLight, you know, sometimes you take on these projects to test drive things. They're design experiments in some ways. And that's what Other Brown Girl was essentially. It started as a journal in the Philippines, 10-hour trek up and down the coast, like along the China Sea, which became a blog. You know, originally it was a book pitch, and then it became eventually something that opened doors for a podcast. So I would say the grant actually more represented not getting the money, because not all of us do, right? It's more betting on your potential. You did that, Raven-Lynn, by just talking, you know, kind of hearing yourself on a voice memo. I would encourage everyone to do it. That's part of the coaching that I do too, is sometimes when people are going for first or second interviews, I have them practice on their phone with a voice memo to get used to hearing your voice, the power of your own story and your own truth, essentially, right? Because it's always unfolding, always evolving. But as it relates to the grant, I would say the grant to me represented a risk. Right? I had never done it before. And that's the great thing. You don't know what you don't know. Clearly, I didn't know that there was a stage component and a video component that we needed to do for the pandemic. But, you know, sometimes it's this idea of being your bravest, highest self, your fiercest advocate, the person that's not going to let you down and is going to believe in you even when everything else is going dark. So this is something we talked about. I feel, you know, I'm very grateful that the cancer journey and the comeback journey, I'm always living with this heightened awareness. I don't feel that cancer is behind me necessarily. It's beside me. In fact, I wrote about it. And so it's onevillage.io, 10 things to never say to someone with cancer. So the writing and telling the story or sharing my story, first with myself on paper and then out in the world. I would encourage every one of your listeners to do that, right? Like even doing your podcast, you had to think about, you had something to say. And I'm so happy for you that you followed that light that is really your own light, right? And so if you hadn't took the time, capture that moment in your phone, have that self-reflection and keep going, that grit, that grace where I would not be sitting here with you, right? And so that's what I would encourage everyone to do, is just this idea of you're a living story, a breathing brand, and you have something special and a light to share with the world, even as the world goes dark. And it did for me, really.
Wow.
And it did for all of us with the pandemic, right? We have this, we can never unsee what we saw and what we experienced collectively. And so we have the good fortune of being here, making it through, and sharing our story, sharing our truth, and encouraging others to do the same by our example.
Yeah. It's all about courageously taking up space, like you say.
That's right.
Even if it's not taking up space in a big, large setting or doing it from whatever, just making those small or planting those small seeds where you are is courageously taking up space. It gives #common energy.
Yeah.
Which I would love for you to tell us about, because this is a hashtag that you actually coined.
Well, you know, it's one of those things where, and I wrote about this, so thank you for calling it out. I think that you have it too. And so usually the light in me sees the light in you, and vice versa. So, you know, as I mentioned, I had cancer, and I'm very fortunate to be on this side of it. And I remember feeling like the whole world was going dark. It was also on fire, the world, but it was just, there was a darkness and this force that felt like an undertow, a riptide that could take us all out. And I had to believe, like all of us, that our brighter and better days were ahead of us, and that our lights couldn't go out. I think Elizabeth Gilbert talks about having this inner pilot light, which I love. And so I remember feeling like, and I think I talked about that, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. We are the light, right? We are the light. We're all light bearers. Mm-hmm. And so I remember not being sure how the cancer journey would end. I really had to be prepared. You know, you sit in bed and all the things they talk about, you know, if you had X number of days to live, like I was really thinking about that. And so, and capturing it in these pages and on my MacBook and my sketchbook. But as it relates to comet energy, I talk about that from the standpoint of you never know what one phone call will do. And I really do believe I want to leave with my tank empty, and I want to make sure that we are flares in the air, our stories, that we are going to be brave and tell the truth, and that, you know, that comet energy, it's not for everyone. We talked about this. It comes in bright, hot, fast, like it's intense. It's not for everyone, which is okay, right? But it's also this idea that, you know, I strongly believe, and I've shared this with friends to kind of keep me going. And I had 20 friends that were really like fierce femme friends. I hope you have them too, that would not let me think about anything other than the light. It was like a love net that protected me, and they still do. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get emotional. So as it relates to comet energy, I want to put it all on the line, bet on myself and other people that are willing to do the work and help other people, help more people. Like that's really what this comet energy for me is all about. There's a lot of darkness out there. Let's all be comets in the sky and like light the way and be fierce about the time that we have.
Yeah. What's next for Jing?
Oh my goodness, what's next? So I have a couple of projects that are underway. Right now, I'm super excited about this Next Thing Now platform, which I've been working on and cultivating. So it's really around workshops for modern entrepreneurs to think about telling their story with confidence, building or boosting their brand for clarity, and design mapping their next thing, whatever that is. I feel like there's this, you know, marketing and digital storytelling, you know, it feels a little, a lot to get your arms around. But essentially what it is these conversations that we have with each other and ourselves. So whether that's story stacking, brand building, I'm starting to do these almost like quick sprints around. I usually do really deep dive consulting, which I love to do. That's multi-year. It could be for architectural projects, other things. But I was noticing, through the pandemic and what we've been through, people need help right now. They need to be able to articulate it quickly. So I've been doing these workshops and they've been so much fun. I've been working with a digital sort of therapy group, and he came from gaming out of San Francisco. Super duper fun. We do these workshops and basically help to think about what's next, how to talk about what shows up when you show up in the story, both online and offline. Something that I'm also doing that I'm super excited about, two specific projects and loves of my life. I, 20 years ago, worked with Cleveland Yoga and did the brand. And so we are actually doing this teen prodigy program, teaching, it's the only one in Cleveland, teaching teens a 200-hour Yoga Alliance approved certification. And so it's really helping young women, really all teens, but so far a lot of women step into their power, understand what self-belief, self-advocacy means, not just from your physical appearance, but strength, grit, grace, fierceness, really being true to yourself and present. So that's one project I'm super excited about. Tammy Schneider is the head of and the leader of Cleveland Yoga. Love her. That's something that I'm doing. And then I'm also doing some work with Greg Perry, who is a marketing advisor at Beechwood. And if you ever see these huge teddy bears that are inflatable, that are out around town, last year we did some inflatables like water teardrops, other things. It's essentially what it is 40 high school students from around the area choose a charity of choice. And then they actually I helped coach them around building their story, telling their brand, both for themselves personally. So we do LinkedIn profiles, and we do a networking event where we work with the mayor. He's wonderful, Mayor Burns out of Beechwood. And we really help the students cultivate how to be social entrepreneurs. So last year raised over $100,000. We did beach cleanups for Irresponsible. This year, I'm so proud of these students, and Greg, the advisor, Mr. Perry, have raised over $184,000 in donations for medically these awesome bags called Medi-Teddies that cover IV bags for critically ill children, so they're not afraid when they're in the getting care. So what really excites me is this next generation of leaders like you, like them, who are really leading with heart, big ideas, big hearts, and recognize that we, in small and big ways, can make a difference just by believing our story matters, and others do too.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Jing, for being here with us today. Thank you for taking us higher with your words of wisdom.
Thank you.
If you have any socials, can you drop them so that we can follow you? Absolutely.
So the best way to contact me would be through LinkedIn. And you can just find me on LinkedIn, JingLauengco. And then juju.jing is my Instagram handle. But I also want to say too, next thing with Jing, you can find that on all of your different, wherever you like to listen to podcasts, a lot on Spotify, but you can also see Next Thing with Jing in a reboot pretty soon. So thank you so much for having me. This has been such an honor and delight, and I really applaud you and thank you for your work. It really does make a big difference, and it means a lot to me that you reached out to me.
Yes. Any words for the listeners to hold on to till our next episode?
I would say thinking about your life in terms of light and being that light for others, and knowing that your story matters, that your work matters, and that being true to yourself and sharing the darkest moments and the brightest moments is really what connects us all.
Yes. And I would go with be grounded, be authentic, be you, because whatever you have to say, it matters. Thank you for joining us today on the RayofLight TV podcast. I will see you guys next week.